If Satan wanted his world and kingdom to be left alone, would he not convince Christians that they're actually being good by not being involved? We have something super important to look at here, definitely controversial, so you're going to want to check this out. In 2 Corinthians 4:4, Satan is called the god of this world. And that dude does not want people tampering with his kingdom, so he's created a series of comfortable and convenient delusions so that Christians remain silent and sometimes even believing that they're doing the right thing by keeping their mouths shut. This topic is like the settled science of church culture, so we need to sort of dust off the unturned pages of the mind with some rational skepticism. You see, throughout history, governments have persecuted Christians, but then more effectively paid them to keep their mouths shut. This began to take its root throughout Europe and eventually led to what we call tax exemption. As controversial as my following statement will be, tax exemption is a payoff. It is an acceptable exchange. Silence for more money. A servant cannot serve two masters, as referenced in scriptures, in regards to money. Matthew 10:27-28, Jesus encourages us to continue on despite incentive, persecution, or any other kind of opposition. He said, "Whatever I tell you in the dark, speak in the light, and what you hear in the ear, preach on the housetops. And do not fear those who kill the body, but cannot kill the soul, but rather fear him who is able to destroy both the body and the soul in hell." Payoff? A tax break? If a bit of money requires us to opt out of the political and social and cultural elements of our world, what is politics? Other than morality monopolized through bureaucracy. Let's jump over to the most common points that your pastor is probably using right now. He might reasonably present an argument like this.
Jesus' focus wasn't on the ways of man, but life in the Spirit. He didn't become a senator through his words and actions. Even the apostles were focused on preaching the gospel. They weren't concerned about the transformation of society. Any transformation that happens on the side of politics is a very good thing, but only a byproduct of the preaching of the gospel.
I love that. Fair enough. Good point. But when Jesus preached of life in the Spirit, what systems could he possibly have been comparing that to? And who was he directly confronting most of the time? Well, the Pharisees and Sadducees, of course. But who the heck are those guys? Who were these guys really? Well, the Sadducees believed the Torah was the finalized word of God. They had a following to whom they gave their laws. The Pharisees believed the Torah to also be true, but could be elaborated on by further input from the prophets. This elaboration of the scriptures allowed them to rule over the Jewish people politically, even though they were under a Roman government. Sadducees and Pharisees both were elected in what we would call a democratic system. And by democratic, I simply mean, in this context, conceptually, the popular vote is what elects those leaders. Jesus was not simply confronting religious leaders, as we so often hear them described, like maybe the misguided leaders of a church, or say a hyper-religious rule-based denomination. They were elected political officials in the Jewish system of government. Jesus directly faces the corrupt political system of his time during these interactions. If the fundamental call is to go into all the world and preach the gospel, which part of that world are we talking about? If Satan wanted his world and kingdom to be left alone, would he not convince Christians that they're actually being good by not being involved? Our option to sit in a church and stay out of it, that religious freedom only came by way of interaction and assertive change. When did we acquire our freedom and how? By opting out? You may never become a senator. You may never stand on a platform. You may never be a president. But a preacher, a churchgoer, or anyone with the call of the Great Commission, which is everyone, where is there a better place to compare and contrast the darkness from the light than the town square of political issues? A simplification of this may suggest that we don't address political issues because they're separate. But what is politics other than the monopolization of moral issues through a system of government? What we know is that things default into chaos unless they're guided. There's a shaking and a change going on now that is unlike what we have felt and experienced in the past. We've seen a nation crumbling in front of our faces. Many of you may have felt what I have and laid awake at night wondering, do I need to be an associate pastor climbing the ladder? How many things do I need on my resume to qualify me to spread the gospel and be part of the kingdom? But my mission here is to remind those of us that feel this call that Jesus chose John the Baptist straight out of the desert, Peter, a fisherman, Paul, previously a Pharisee. God uses just normal people. You have a call. It doesn't come from a prophet or a skill set that you have. And there's something changing. There is something happening. Do all that like and subscribe stuff that you're supposed to do so that this can keep going. If you agree, share this with a friend, share this with your pastor. If you don't agree, I don't know, tell me in the comments. Together, we will advance the renewed calling on the church.